They were fast, familiar, and filled our childhood kitchens with warmth. And yet somehow they vanished without a trace. What else did we lose when we stopped making the meals that saved us? Cracker Stackers with Cheese Whiz and pickle slices were not just a snack. They were an act of rebellion against real meals. It felt like every childhood had its moment of stacking saltines in awkward towers, squeezing a ribbon of Cheese Whiz like it was gourmet, and slapping on a cold, wet slice of pickle straight from the jar. These were the kind of snacks you made when you were home alone after school, still smelling like chalk dust and pencil shavings. The saltines always cracked too soon. The Cheese Whiz came out in a sputtering mess. The pickles dripped on the linoleum floor, and none of that mattered. You were feeding yourself, and that meant something. Grown-ups never approved. That only made it better. There was something so satisfying about the salty snap, the tang of vinegar, and the weird chemical warmth of processed cheese that never needed a refrigerator. Today, it sounds like something out of a science lab. But back then, it was survival food for latchkey kids who just wanted something quick, loud, and crunchy before the cartoons started. Maybe that is why it tasted so good. It was ours, and no one could take it away. Ketchup and egg-fried toast was not created in a fancy kitchen or from a cookbook. It was born of empty shelves and early mornings. In the kind of house where breakfast was whatever you could piece together, this dish was king. One slice of white bread, pan-fried in bacon grease if you had it, or just dry if you did not. Crack an egg into a bowl, squirt in some ketchup, beat it until it looked like sunset soup, and pour it over the bread in the skillet. That was it. The ketchup gave the eggs a strange pink glow. The toast would go soggy in the middle and you would eat it hot, standing over the sink. Some families swore by this as a Depression-era invention. Others just remembered it as a single mother's trick to make the last egg stretch across two mouths. And yet, it was always more than the sum of its parts. The smell alone could make a kitchen feel full. It was fast, filling, and tasted better than it had any right to. Try serving it now, and you might get a few raised eyebrows. But taste it again, and you will remember what it felt like to need something warm. Velveeta and grape jelly sandwiches were the sandwich version of a dare, but one that actually worked. They sat in foil wrappers inside lunchboxes, sweating through their bread and releasing a smell that would haunt a school bus. It should not have worked. Cheese and jelly? Who came up with that? But somehow, the tangy salt of Velveeta and the sugary punch of grape jelly melded into something strangely comforting. These sandwiches showed up on road trips, at gas station picnics, or at the Little League bleachers when someone forgot to pack lunch until the last second. The Velveeta would ooze through the Wonder Bread like lava, while the jelly stuck everything together like glue. It was messy, weird, and absolutely unforgettable. Some kids traded them away in shame. Others guarded them like treasure. Either way, it was one of those sandwiches you did not forget, even if you wanted to. Back then, nobody was worried about sugar content or sodium levels. You just wanted something fast that could survive a few hours in a brown paper bag. Velveeta and grape jelly was that kind of sandwich. And maybe, just maybe, it deserves a strange little comeback. Bologna cups with instant mashed potato filling were like edible crafts for hungry kids. You took a slice of bologna, slapped it into a muffin tin, and watched as it curled into a perfect little bowl under the broiler. It felt like science class, only better because afterward you got to eat it. Into that meat bowl went a scoop of mashed potatoes, usually from a box, never from scratch. You might sprinkle some shredded cheese or bacon bits if you were lucky, but mostly it was about speed. 5 minutes from fridge to plate. That was all it took, and somehow it felt fancy, like a gourmet appetizer made by someone who had never seen a restaurant. They were salty, smoky, and oddly satisfying. It was the kind of thing your older cousin would show you how to make while babysitting, grinning like they had unlocked a culinary secret. These bologna cups were not about nutrition or elegance. They were about invention. They made you feel like you were winning dinner with the bare minimum. Today, it sounds absurd. But there was a time when this was survival, wrapped in joy. One bite, and you remember how proud you felt holding your own little edible bowl. Saltine canapes with mayo and canned pineapple bits were a strange mix of desperation and flair. You started with a plain saltine spread on a dollop of mayonnaise, not Miracle Whip, the real kind, and then carefully topped it with a bite-sized chunk of pineapple straight from the can. That was it. No one thought about nutrition. It was about taste, and more than that, about presentation. These were cocktail snacks, believe it or not. Your aunt might serve them during bridge night with a tall glass of ginger ale, calling them her island bites. They were salty, sweet, creamy, and somehow refreshing. A throwback to the 1960s when processed food was new, exciting, and colorful. These little crackers were party food for the working class, elegance on a shoestring budget. They were also the go-to snack when you had 5 minutes before company came over and only a half-empty pantry to work with. Say what you will about canned pineapple, but it brought life to more dead dishes than we give it credit for. These canapes were strange, sure, but they were also resourceful. And for some people, they were the taste of home. Frozen peas and Miracle Whip salad was the queen of cold side dishes. You knew it had arrived at the potluck when you saw a glass mixing bowl filled with bright green peas, foggy with chill, and topped with what looked like whipped snow. It was not fancy, but it was proud. And it had followers. You poured in the peas, added a spoonful of Miracle Whip, maybe tossed in shredded cheese or a few bacon bits, and gave it a stir. Done. That was your salad. No greens, no lettuce, no croutons. Just sweet peas and creamy dressing, and somehow it worked. You would eat it cold, right out of the fridge, standing barefoot on the kitchen linoleum. It felt like something your grandmother would hand you on a hot day and say, "It will cool you off and fill you up." And she was right. This was not about crunch or texture. This was about simplicity, memory, and the weird magic that happens when you put two things together that should not belong. If you never tried it, you missed out. And if you did, well, you remember. Marshmallow fluff and peanut butter apple nachos were a sugar-loaded masterpiece that no school lunch monitor approved. You sliced up apples into thin wedges, laid them out on a plate, and drizzled spoonfuls of peanut butter and fluff across the top like you were decorating a birthday cake. Sometimes you added chocolate chips or crushed pretzels. But even plain, this thing was electric. It was part snack, part dessert, and part chaotic art project. Kids loved it because it felt like something you were not supposed to eat. Parents loved it because it got fruit into their children's bodies without an argument. Fluff was the star, though. Sticky, stretchy, and sweet enough to make your teeth ache, it turned boring apples into something close to candy. These nachos were never in any cookbook. They spread through word of mouth, birthday parties, and after-school sleepovers. You made it with whatever was left in the cupboard. And somehow, it always tasted better than anything you could buy. In 5 minutes, you could go from hungry and bored to sticky and satisfied. Sardine and onion cracker bites were not for the faint of heart. They were bold, fishy, and absolutely unforgettable. You would take a plain cracker, Ritz if you had them, saltines if you did not, lay down a sardine straight from the tin, and top it with a slice of raw onion. It hit your nose before it hit your tongue. But for a certain generation, especially post-war dads in the recliner with the radio on, this was a delicacy. Sardines were cheap, packed with protein, and easy to store. Onions were just about the only vegetable you could find at all times. Together, they made a strange kind of sense. This was not about flavor. It was about ritual. A little hot sauce, a cold beer, and you were set. Kids would wrinkle their noses. Wives would complain. But these little bites were stubbornly good. They belonged to the people who had learned not to waste food, not to fuss, and not to complicate things that worked. You might not crave it now, but try it once and tell me you do not feel something. Tang ice cream float was the neon miracle of the space age. You took a glass of cold soda, scooped in a scoop of vanilla ice cream, and stirred in a spoonful of Tang powder like you were mixing chemicals in a lab. It fizzed, it foamed, it changed color. And then it became a sugar bomb that made your tongue curl and your eyes widen. Tang was everywhere in the 1970s and 1980s. Space commercials, cereal boxes, classrooms. Parents bought it because it was cheap. Kids loved it because it felt futuristic. Add ice cream, and you had a dessert that was part drink, part science experiment, and all joy. You drank it with a straw. You scooped it with a spoon. And when it melted, you slurped the weird orange milk from the bottom of the glass. Nothing about it was natural, but everything about it was fun. It was 5 minutes of chaotic happiness in a cup. And somehow, it made you feel like you were part of something bigger, like you were living in the future. Microwave cinnamon toast with powdered sugar and margarine was the shortcut to comfort. You took a slice of soft white bread, smeared it with margarine straight from the tub, sprinkled on cinnamon, and shook a snowfall of powdered sugar across the top. Into the microwave it went for 20 to 30 seconds, just enough to melt everything into a gooey layer of sweet spice. No toaster, no oven, no adult supervision. This was the breakfast of kids who made their own morning routine. The sugar would pool in the corners. The margarine would soak through the bread. You would eat it hot, floppy, and way too sweet, and it was perfect. It smelled like warmth. It tasted like holidays. And even though the crust might go rubbery, nobody cared. This toast was about speed, sweetness, and the pride of making something all by yourself. You could add raisins if you were brave, but most just kept it simple. Cinnamon toast like this was a rite of passage. 5 minutes, 1 microwave, and a craving. That was all it took. Canned deviled ham and pickle roll-ups were the kind of snack your aunt brought to every potluck, arranged in neat spirals and stabbed with colored toothpicks like they were too proud to touch. All it took was a slice of cold lunch meat, a smear of canned deviled ham, pink, salty, and oddly spicy, and a sliver of dill pickle rolled right into the center. You made a bunch, stuck them in the fridge, and waited. No oven, no pan, just 5 minutes and the kind of quiet confidence that came from growing up when no one threw anything away. They were tangy, creamy, and held together more by faith than structure, but they never fell apart. That was the magic. These little bites were part Southern hospitality, part post-war pantry science. You saw them at baby showers, game nights, backyard barbecues, wherever folks wanted to eat with their fingers and feel just a little bit fancy. You could eat 5 without noticing. You could eat 10 and still be hungry. But that did not matter. Because when you bit into one, you remembered exactly what made the strangest foods feel like home. Cheddar and grape nuts broil cups sound like a dare. But once upon a time, they were a featured gem on the back of a cereal box. And they worked. You took a scoop of cooked grape nut cereal, stirred in shredded cheddar, shaped it into little mounds or pressed it into muffin tins, and slid it under the broiler until the tops turned golden and crispy. It was cereal turned savory, sweet turned salty. Breakfast turned into snack time. The flavor was nutty, sharp, and unlike anything else in the kitchen, they were warm, weird, and strangely good. You could make 6 in 5 minutes and eat them all by yourself, no judgment. These broil cups lived in the margins of cookbooks and in the hearts of people who liked to experiment with what little they had. Maybe it was a grandmother's trick. Maybe it was a last-ditch snack before payday. But it was clever, and clever counted. Especially in a world where you stretched meals by turning leftovers into something brand new. Cheddar and grape nuts were not a mistake. They were a little miracle baked into a crispy cup. Quickie chow. Main sandwiches on white bread were the opposite of authentic, and exactly what some families relied on when time, energy, and groceries were all running low. You opened a can of la choy chow mein, dumped the contents onto a slice of soft white bread, folded it like a taco, and hoped the juices would not soak through too fast. They always did. But you ate it anyway, because it was warm, it was salty, and it somehow filled the hole. The noodles slid everywhere. The vegetables were soft beyond recognition, but that thick, gloopy sauce was everything. You tasted it. And suddenly it was Tuesday night in 1975. Your parents arguing about bills while you watched reruns with a paper plate on your lap. This was not takeout. This was make do. Some people toasted the bread, others used hamburger buns. A few got fancy and added crispy chow mein noodles on top for texture. But no one ever called it gourmet. They called it dinner. Fast, messy, and unforgettable. One bite, and you remember that strange fusion of cultures, convenience, and quiet resilience. Creamed corn toast boats were like edible comfort rafts. You took a slice of stale bread, pressed the middle down with your thumb to make a dip, filled it with a few spoonfuls of hot creamed corn, and sprinkled it with paprika if you were feeling generous. Sometimes shredded cheese went on top, sometimes not. You popped it in the toaster oven or under the broiler just long enough to warm it through. Then you ate it slowly, carefully, so the corn did not burn your tongue or spill down your shirt. It was soft, sweet, and oddly rich. For some kids, it was breakfast. For others, it was the only hot food they got all day. This dish did not need meat, it did not need time, and it did not need anyone's approval. It just worked. You felt full afterward, and sometimes that was enough. The bread was chewy, the corn was creamy. The whole thing was done in under 5 minutes, and you could make it with one hand while the other held your report card or a game controller. A little weird, a little wonderful, and way too forgotten. Jell-O and cottage cheese cups were the mid-century dream of nutrition. Part salad, part dessert, and entirely confusing. You took a packet of Jell-O powder, mixed it up as usual, and folded in a few spoonfuls of cottage cheese once it began to set. Maybe you added pineapple chunks, maybe canned mandarins, maybe shredded carrots if you grew up in a house that liked to test your limits. These cups sat in the fridge for an hour, but took less than 5 minutes to make. They were pastel, jiggly, and hard to explain. But every Tupperware party, every potluck, and every retro hospital tray had one. People swore they were good for you. High protein, low cost, no waste. And honestly, they were not half bad. Sweet, creamy, cold. They hit a strange middle ground between treat and obligation. Grandmothers made them by the dozen. Moms packed them in lunchboxes. And now you would be lucky to find one outside a vintage cookbook. But try it again, and you will remember exactly why every refrigerator once had a shelf reserved just for these wobbly little surprises. Peanut butter and bacon Ritz stacks were like tiny towers of rebellion. They did not follow the rules of flavor. You started with a buttery Ritz cracker, added a smear of peanut butter, and topped it with a piece of crispy bacon, sometimes crumbled, sometimes whole. That was it. You stacked them on a paper towel, ate 3 in a row, and wondered why anyone ever bothered making real food. It was smoky, salty, sweet, crunchy, cheap. You could make a plate in minutes and feel like you had invented something. And maybe you had. This was the snack of summer camp nights, midnight cravings, and rainy afternoons when no one felt like cooking. It was not meant to be balanced. It was meant to taste like a cartoon, the kind of snack your older cousin taught you to make while babysitting, laughing because it felt like breaking the law. And in a way, it was. Bacon and peanut butter, together, on crackers? It made no sense. And that is exactly why it worked. Wiener slices in tomato soup with crumbled saltines were the poor man's stew, and nobody complained. You took a can of tomato soup, thinned it just a little with water or milk, brought it to a simmer, and dropped in chopped up hot dogs. Not grilled, not fancy, just sliced straight from the fridge. The soup turned thicker with every minute. The hot dogs bobbed around like little rafts. And the saltines, those went on top, crushed by hand, right before eating. They soaked up the broth, softened into something that was not quite solid, not quite liquid. It was sloppy, steamy, and perfect for cold nights or empty wallets. You slurped it with a big spoon and wiped the bowl with more crackers. It was not glamorous. It was survival. And for a lot of people, it tasted better than anything from a restaurant. This dish had no pretense, no garnish, and no apology. It filled your stomach, warmed your chest, and made 5 ingredients feel like a feast. Mayonnaise banana bites are the kind of recipe that stops people in their tracks right before they say, "Wait, what?" But yes, it was real. You sliced a banana, added a dab of mayonnaise on each piece, and if you were really bold, sprinkled chopped peanuts or crushed cornflakes on top. It was a Southern thing, or maybe a bridge club thing. It was definitely a "my grandmother swore by it" thing. The banana was sweet and soft. The mayonnaise was tangy and thick. And somehow together, they created something your taste buds could not quite place, but could not stop thinking about. This was finger food from a world that did not waste. A time when fruit and fat were precious and flavor combinations were born out of what was left in the pantry. Kids gagged, adults shrugged, but everyone tried it at least once. And for some, it stuck. A weird, creamy, banana-flavored memory lodged deep in the mind. You might not crave it now, but take a bite and tell me you do not remember something. Toasted cheese and apple sandwich on white bread was the kind of odd couple that should not have worked, but absolutely did. You laid out 2 slices of white bread, added thin slices of tart apple and cheddar cheese, and broiled it open-faced until the edges turned golden and the cheese melted into a bubbling puddle. Then you slapped the slices together and took a bite. Crunchy crust, sweet apple, sharp cheddar, warm bread. It was 5 minutes from start to finish and tasted like fall afternoons in school lunchrooms. This sandwich was the unspoken favorite of kids who grew up in apple orchard towns or had fridges full of odds and ends. It was quick. It was clever. It was just weird enough to feel special. Maybe it came from a mom's late-night experiment. Maybe it was passed down through a line of school teachers who knew how to stretch a meal. Either way, it worked. And it deserves a spot in every toaster oven today. Microwave Bologna Crispies with mustard dip were the snack you made when everything else was gone. You took a slice of bologna, placed it between 2 paper towels, and microwaved it until it shriveled into a crispy, bacon-like chip. The edges curled, the middle bubbled, and the smell? Strong enough to fill the whole kitchen. You dipped them in yellow mustard, sometimes honey mustard if you were feeling fancy. That was it. 5 minutes, no pan, no cleanup. Just the salty crunch of processed meat turned into something snackable. It was born out of boredom, out of curiosity, out of that moment when you stared into the fridge and thought, there has to be something in here I can eat. And somehow, you made it work. These Crispies were never meant to impress. They were meant to save the moment, and that is exactly what they did. Graham cracker ice cream. Sandwiches with Cool Whip were the crown jewel of every makeshift summer freezer. You started with 2 graham crackers, usually the off-brand kind that crumbled if you looked at them too hard, and sandwiched a thick scoop of Cool Whip in the middle. No churning, no waiting. Just slap them together, wrap in foil, toss in the freezer, and forget about them until the sun was high and the box fan was rattling in the window. They came out soft, cold, and impossibly fluffy. A dessert without effort, without rules, and without apology. Kids made them. Teenagers made them. Cousins passed the recipe down in whispers, like it was a secret code for surviving the heat. Some added chocolate chips. Some dipped the edges in sprinkles. But the original? The original was enough. It was light. It was sweet. And it disappeared in 3 bites. You ate it standing barefoot on the porch, elbow dripping, grinning because it was too cold to be real. And somehow, that made it better. TV tuna toppers on English muffins were born in the glow of weekday reruns and commercial breaks. You mixed canned tuna with mayonnaise, maybe added a little diced onion or shredded cheddar, then spooned it onto a split English muffin and popped it under the broiler. 2 minutes later, it was golden, bubbling, and smelled like someone's idea of lunch from the future. It was fast, it was hot, it was tuna on bread. And that was all you needed. Moms made them during soap operas. Teenagers made them when they were home alone. And kids learned how to broil using these as their practice run. They were crisp on the bottom, gooey on top, and always left little brown cheese bubbles stuck to the pan, which you scraped off and ate first, of course. Some called them tuna melts, some called them sad. But they were neither. They were honest, they were affordable, and they showed up exactly when you needed something warm and cheesy with absolutely no judgment. Instant ramen egg drop. Scramble was the fastest way to trick yourself into thinking you had cooked something real. No broth, no seasoning packet, just a crumpled brick of instant noodles, dry fried in a hot pan and cracked over with an egg or two. You scrambled it fast, breaking the noodles with your spatula as the egg stuck to the ridges and crevices. Maybe a little soy sauce, maybe some pepper, maybe nothing at all. The whole thing took 5 minutes. It smelled like dorm rooms, pay-per-view nights, and rainy afternoons when the power had just come back on. You felt like a chef, even if the results looked like something out of a junk drawer. It was salty, chewy, eggy, and just greasy enough to make you feel like you got away with something. Nobody wrote this one down. It just happened. A dish passed by instinct, not tradition. And for what it lacked in looks, it made up for in comfort. Peanut butter pickle sandwiches were the culinary version of telling the world, I do not care what you think. You spread peanut butter, chunky or smooth, no one ever agreed, on white bread and layered on cold, tangy dill pickle slices, slammed the other slice of bread on top, gave it a press, and took a bite before doubt could creep in. It was crunchy. It was creamy. It was sour and sweet and salty all at once. It made 0 sense, and that was exactly the point. This sandwich came from lunchboxes packed by exhausted parents, from midnight cravings with limited options, and from a deep American tradition of saying, why not? When everyone else said, you shouldn't. You did not serve this to guests. You did not talk about it in public, but you remembered it. And sometimes, you secretly made another. Hot dog slaw cups with shredded Velveeta were what happened when you had hot dogs, no buns, and a stubborn desire to eat something that felt like a meal. You sliced the hot dogs lengthwise without cutting all the way through, bent them into cups, and held them in place with toothpicks on a plate. In went the coleslaw, creamy, crunchy, and cold. Then came the shredded Velveeta, which melted slightly if you gave it a few seconds in the microwave. It was a salad. It was a side. It was weird. And it was perfect. They were messy, sloppy, and held together with more hope than structure. But they looked like something, like effort, like creativity, like the kind of thing your neighbor would serve at a backyard gathering while joking, "Do not judge me." But you would not, because it worked. Somehow, it just worked. Maple syrup toast squares with butter chips were 5-minute joy from the heart of a snow day morning. You took a slice of soft white bread, cut it into squares with kitchen scissors, and drizzled maple syrup, real if you had it, fake if you did not, across the top. Then you added tiny pats of butter to each square and put it under the broiler until everything sizzled and bubbled together into a golden mess. You pulled it out, waited exactly 1 second too short, and burned your mouth on the first bite. Worth it. This was not toast. This was breakfast candy, a shortcut version of French toast without the eggs, the effort, or the dishes. It was something your grandfather might have made when he was home from the night shift, still smelling like pipe smoke and motor oil. It was warm. It was soft. It stuck to your fingers and your memory. Mini Vienna. Sausage tacos and corn chip shells were the bite-sized fusion no one asked for, but somehow needed. You took those tiny Vienna sausages, split them lengthwise or not, and nestled them into corn chips, the scoopable kind if you had them. Then you added whatever you could find, shredded cheese, a dab of mustard, maybe a slice of pickle, or a leftover spoonful of slaw. You lined them up on a plate like appetizers at a child's banquet, nuked them for 30 seconds, and called it dinner, or lunch, or something in between. These tacos were not authentic. They were not healthy, but they were fast and fun and deeply, deeply satisfying in that I made this with my bare hands kind of way. You could eat a dozen without blinking, and you probably did. Canned chili dip with Kraft singles on white bread was the TV dinner that never made it to the freezer aisle. You opened a can of chili, no beans, extra beans, it never mattered. Scooped a few spoonfuls onto a slice of bread, tore a Kraft single into pieces, and layered it on top like a patchy orange quilt. Into the microwave for 60 seconds, and out came a bubbling, steaming comfort bomb of salt and softness. You folded the bread in half, tried not to burn your fingers, and devoured it in front of a glowing screen. This was not a recipe. It was a ritual, the kind of snack you made during commercials, when you had exactly 3 minutes and a hunger that felt bigger than the fridge. It was cheesy, it was sloppy, and it left a warm orange memory on every plate. Quick tomato juice. Gazpacho with salt and cracked ice was a cold soup made for heat waves and half-stocked fridges. You poured tomato juice into a tall glass, stirred in a dash of salt, maybe a shake of garlic powder or hot sauce, and added a few cubes of cracked ice. That was it. A spoon if you were fancy, a straw if you were not. It was sharp. It was salty. It hit the back of your throat and made your whole face wake up. It felt like a meal and a punch in the face at the same time. Adults called it refreshing. Kids called it weird. But it was cheap, quick, and more filling than it had any right to be. Sometimes you sipped it while reading the newspaper. Sometimes you just stood by the kitchen sink, sweating, and let it cool your insides. Either way, it was unforgettable. Sugared bread fingers with evaporated milk dip were a Depression-era dessert that never should have worked, but did. You took a slice of white bread, cut it into strips, and fried or toasted them until they were crisp. Then you rolled them in a mix of sugar and cinnamon, just like poor man's churros. The dip was the real magic, a splash of evaporated milk in a shallow bowl, sometimes sweetened with a touch of syrup or a drop of vanilla. That was it. You dipped, you chewed. You wondered how something so simple could be so good. It was a treat made from nothing. A few scraps, a little sweetness, and a whole lot of memory. Grandmothers made it without blinking. Kids devoured it like treasure. And for a few quiet minutes, everything felt okay. Southern skillet cornbread has been a beloved memento of the South for many decades to the rest of the nation. But in the area, it is a tradition that goes back all the way to the 18th century. History books tell us that it comes from Native American cuisine, and it makes sense since a lot of Native American cuisine was very cost-effective. It is kind of everything you would want in a home-cooked meal, easy on the wallet, simple ingredients you can find at any nearby store, and little prep time, which means you can get your cravings fulfilled immediately. Plus, most cooks back then were so accustomed to it from a lifetime of making cornbread in these cast-iron skillets that they could make it much faster than even an experienced cook. Guess experience counts for something, especially when you have 40 to 50 years of it, right? Comfort food in the 1940s could not be discussed without somebody bringing up American slumgullion. This was really hot in the Midwest and the South, mostly by its other name of goulash. The dish has been in recipes and cookbooks since at least 1913, and it would include ground beef simmered in a tomato sauce. It was a dish for nights that you really wanted to make matter, and it was also a great way to keep the nutrition and protein intake up. Think of it as like a kind of casserole, and if you have heard of it before, you should know the 1930s versions were a bit different. These ones involved no pasta or macaroni or cheese. Those would become staples of the dish much later on, and we have grandparents to thank for that too. One of Grandma's favorite beauty rituals, surely, is the avocado mask. This green masterpiece isn't just guacamole gone rogue. It's a deeply nourishing treatment that brings hydration and vitality back to your skin. The recipe is as simple as it is effective. Mash half a ripe avocado until smooth, mix in a tablespoon of honey for its antibacterial properties, and add a teaspoon of oatmeal for gentle exfoliation. Apply it evenly to your face, let it sit for 15 minutes, and rinse with warm water. The result? Skin that feels soft, plump, and rejuvenated. Avocados are the real MVP here, rich in healthy fats, vitamin E, and antioxidants. These nutrients penetrate deep into the skin, locking in moisture and combating dryness. The honey works its magic by soothing irritation and reducing redness, while oatmeal exfoliates dead skin cells without being harsh. Together, they form a trifecta of skin nourishment. Ancient Aztecs referred to avocado as butter of the forest, using them to protect and soften their skin in harsh climates. Grandma always joked that this mask made her look so young, she got carded at the bingo hall. It's nature's facelift. No needles, no fuss. Just pure avocado goodness. Speaking of how different things were in their time due to the economical strife, one thing that got really popular back when your grandparents were still young was sausage gravy and biscuits. This might seem like an outlandish combo to us today, and we admit it takes a bit of getting used to, but the magic is all in the gravy. Biscuits and gravy are already something Americans have been pretty accustomed to eating, especially in the 20th century, but innovation is one of the finer points of the country, and culinary matters are no exception. People eventually found out that using pork sausage crumbles enriched the gravy and made it irresistible, especially if they were smoked. Usually biscuits like jumbo buttermilk ones make for a great side to the dish, but even the gravy alone was worth eating on its own. In Texas as well as New York, rice with raisins started becoming a really popular dish among the middle class and a breakfast that many children grew up on. Especially in Indian American communities, which were sparse at the time, but they were still there every other block or two. It was already customary to eat rice with milk and raisins there, so they brought it to America, and others took note. They were not the only ones to introduce it, though, since Chinese Americans also had their own take on the recipe that led to a more custard-like variant. When people could not afford to even eat rice pudding, they would make their rice and eat it with different kinds of nuts and raisins. The idea spread like wildfire in states like Alabama and Arkansas and the Midwest overall. In Michigan, it was a pretty common choice to use brown sugar and cinnamon whenever available. Next on Grandma's list is a drink so golden it practically glows: turmeric golden milk. This soothing blend of turmeric, black pepper, ginger, and warm milk, or your favorite plant-based alternative, isn't just a bedtime treat, it's a powerhouse for your health. Turmeric, the star ingredient, contains curcumin, a compound celebrated for its potent anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. Curcumin isn't easily absorbed by the body. That's where black pepper comes in, with piperine to boost absorption by up to 2,000%. Ginger adds a warming zing and further supports digestion. Combine this with milk for creaminess and a dose of calcium, and you've got a recipe that's equal parts comfort and health. It's been around for centuries, often called liquid gold. In ancient India, brides drank turmeric milk for radiant skin before their wedding day. To make it, simply whisk a teaspoon of turmeric, a pinch of black pepper, grated ginger, and your choice of milk. Sweeten it with honey if desired. Sip slowly and feel the warmth from the inside out. Grandma called it her glow drink. We call it science in a mug with a side of golden charm. Flaky buttermilk biscuits are all well and good if you buy them as a snack at your local mart. But you have not tried a buttermilk biscuit until you get a veteran baker to make these for you. Who better than family? And what family member is more skilled in baking than your trusty grandmother? Well, not all of them cook or bake, but the nation has more than its fair share of Grandma's creamy buttermilk recipes floating around the internet and cookbooks from dozens of years ago. Practice always makes perfect, and most home chefs learned that the great secret of an impeccable buttermilk biscuit is to not overmix so that you avoid flat and tough biscuits. These were extremely common as snacks to give to children in the family during holidays and were the perfect pairing for a gift basket. Comfort food in the 1940s could not be discussed without somebody bringing up American slumgullion. This was really hot in the Midwest and the South, mostly by its other name of goulash. The dish has been in recipes and cookbooks since at least 1913, and it would include ground beef simmered in a tomato sauce. It was a dish for nights that you really wanted to make matter, and it was also a great way to keep the nutrition and protein intake up. Think of it as like a kind of casserole, and if you have heard of it before, you should know the 1930s versions were a bit different. These ones involved no pasta or macaroni or cheese. Those would become staples of the dish much later on, and we have grandparents to thank for that too. Garlic-infused olive oil was another one of Grandma's hidden gems. She used it both in the kitchen and as a topical treatment, thanks to its powerful antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties. Making garlic-infused olive oil is simple. Take a few cloves of garlic, crush or chop them, and add them to a bottle of extra virgin olive oil. Let it steep for about a week in a cool, dark place, shaking it every day to allow the flavors to meld. The garlic releases its potent compounds, which work wonders when used both inside and out. Internally, garlic is well known for its ability to boost immune function and fight harmful bacteria. But when applied topically, it acts as a natural antibacterial agent, helping to clear up skin infections and soothe irritated areas. The olive oil serves as a hydrating base, offering deep moisture while also aiding in the absorption of the garlic's nutrients. Ancient Egyptians even used it as a remedy for ailments. During World War II, soldiers used garlic to prevent infection in wounds. Here is a dish that you have probably heard of one too many times but never gotten enough of: meatloaf with mashed potatoes. Let's just say that comfort cooking really does not get much higher than this, nor more relaxing. Sitcoms, movies, and comedies across the decades that depict middle-class families always have somebody serving up a killer meatloaf, and it is for good reason. Our generation's parents always grew up eating a hearty meatloaf with a side of perfectly mushy soft potatoes, so it is no wonder that they kept the custom going. Today, mashed potatoes have an 85% popularity rate, which even beats hamburgers and cheeseburgers. You would think that those would be America's top one, but it seems nothing can beat Grand's meatloaf classics. In Texas as well as New York, rice with raisins started becoming a really popular dish among the middle class and a breakfast that many children grew up on, especially in Indian American communities, which were sparse at the time, but they were still there every other block or two. It was already customary to eat rice with milk and raisins there, so they brought it to America, and others took note. They were not the only ones to introduce it, though, since Chinese Americans also had their own take on the recipe that led to a more custard-like variant. When people could not afford to even eat rice pudding, they would make their rice and eat it with different kinds of nuts and raisins. The idea spread like wildfire in states like Alabama and Arkansas and the Midwest overall. In Michigan, it was a pretty common choice to use brown sugar and cinnamon whenever available. Grandma swore by her almond oil massage as the ultimate solution for dry, tired skin. She applied it generously to her face and body, claiming it was her secret weapon for keeping wrinkles at bay and maintaining that youthful glow. Almond oil is a natural oil derived from sweet almonds, cold-pressed to preserve its richness in vitamin E, antioxidants, and essential fatty acids. This makes it a perfect hydrating treatment for dry skin, as it helps lock in moisture and softens the skin's surface. A simple almond oil massage before bed was Grandma's way of showing love to her skin. She'd apply a few drops, gently massaging it in circular motions, letting the oil work its magic overnight. The benefits of almond oil are undeniable. Its vitamin E content nourishes the skin and helps to reduce the appearance of fine lines, while its anti-inflammatory properties calm irritated skin. Regular use can improve skin elasticity, making it look firmer and more radiant. Historically, almond oil has been a beauty staple for centuries, used in ancient cultures like the Egyptians, who valued it for its moisturizing and anti-aging properties. Collard greens and ham hocks have been a combo that has very faithfully stood the passing of time, and we think it is partly due to all the different takes on it that families keep coming up with. You hear cabbage and your heart does not exactly burst with excitement, but collard greens is another story. Pair it up with smoky ham hocks and you have yourself a meal on a budget like no other. A ham hock itself is a portion of bone with connective tissue and some meat that is covered in fat and skin, and the other name for these is pork knuckles. With some sweet onions, garlic, and chicken broth, this was a recipe that would give any other dish a run for its money, and it was great for your diet too. Gotta make sure your grandkids grow up right and proper after all. So most oatmeal meatloaf recipes use the oats as a side piece to, like, 2 pounds of lean ground beef, but that was obviously not what people were working with back then. Instead, the loaf was made entirely of layers of oatmeal, with sausages and bacon stuffed into it to give that meaty profile. Some dried onions and garlic meant that there was good enough reason to get the fine plates out, and there was always enough to go around too. Plus, grandmas really ran with the recipe right after the Depression ended and things started going back to normal. They would add things like tomato sauces and never spare the eggs or the flour. Probably why kids would love it so much since they went all out with it. But after going through a patch where this was a luxury, you cannot blame them for wanting to go the extra mile either. Grandma always said that the key to staying youthful was found right in nature's bounty, seasonal fruits and vegetables. She made it a point to eat whatever was in season, believing that local produce was the most nutritious and freshest way to nourish the body and the skin. Eating seasonal produce means enjoying fruits and vegetables at their peak, when they're packed with vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. Whether it's summer's juicy peaches and tomatoes or fall's hearty squash and apples, these foods offer the nutrients our bodies need to thrive. In addition to supporting overall health, seasonal fruits and vegetables are fantastic for the skin. Berries, like strawberries and blueberries, are high in antioxidants, which help combat the effects of aging by protecting skin cells from free radicals. Leafy greens, like kale and spinach, provide vitamin C, essential for collagen production, keeping skin firm and radiant. Seasonal eating has been around for centuries, with people growing and harvesting according to the natural rhythm of the seasons. Grandma often remarked that eating foods in season just made sense. It's how nature intended. Did you know that ancient Greeks believed eating seasonal foods helped maintain balance in the body? Grandma would have agreed, especially when it came to enjoying summer berries in a fresh salad. A lot of the recipes from the times of our parents come from the Depression and from when America was recovering from it, but things like baked ziti is what they would whip up when they had a bit of money in their pocket. Some cooked ziti, ricotta cheese, eggs, and spaghetti sauce meant for an incredibly easy and amazing pasta. If you had the Parmesan to spare, you could also sprinkle it on or add a melted layer as a topping. It did not take too long to make, and it tasted very different from regular pasta or spaghetti and meatballs, which was a recipe favored by moms more than grandmas. The real highlight of the dish is in the shape of the ziti, since they end up being these 25 to 30 centimeter tubes. When they turn into soft pasta, they become great for chewing and work really well with the cheese. Grandmas would always spice it up with some beef or duck here and there, though. Oatmeal went out the window and cornmeal came in, especially as the base of dishes like Johnny cakes, which were the cravings of everyone. They were made from fried cornmeal gruel, hot water, salt, or sweetened milk if it was available. People used a specific kind of pan to make these too, and it was known as a spider pan. Essential to the Johnny cake experience was keeping a very watchful eye on them to ensure the crisp did not burn, as well keeping a constant supply of bacon fat. That was another thing that got popular as people would store the fat from strips of bacon up and use it in dishes like this. In half an hour, you had a pretty decent lunch made with some pretty bare-bones ingredients. Among Grandma's timeless secrets, aloe vera gel was her go-to solution for almost every skin concern. This simple, transparent gel, extracted from the leaves of the aloe vera plant, is a botanical marvel with a history stretching back over 6,000 years. Harvesting aloe vera is as straightforward as it gets. You cut a mature leaf from the plant, slice it open lengthwise, and scoop out the clear, jelly-like substance inside. This fresh gel can be applied directly to the skin or stored in the fridge for a cooling treat on a hot day. Aloe vera is rich in vitamins A, C, and E, all of which are antioxidants that combat free radicals and help repair skin damage. It also contains polysaccharides, which stimulate collagen production, promoting skin elasticity and reducing fine lines. The gel's natural hydrating properties soothe irritation, heal minor burns, and even fade scars. Think of it as nature's all-in-one skincare product, no preservatives required. During World War II, it was used to treat radiation burns because of its remarkable healing abilities. Grandma loved to joke that aloe vera was the cheapest therapist she ever had. Smooth, soothing, and always there when you need it. Twice-cooked potatoes are firmly a thing of the past now, but that does not mean this video cannot serve as your inspiration to bring back this hit, which was especially popular with grandmas all around the country. Like we said with the previous dish, Something being good for your health and tasty does wonders for its appeal, and Granny's knows how to get the best of both worlds. Double cooking always had a benefit because it made them a lot easier to digest and increased their starch. They would prick the potatoes, cook, cool, then cook again before topping it off with green onions and bacon. An incredibly American idea, but also an extremely flavorful one. So do not hesitate to give this one a go. Here's one of Grandma's most treasured secrets: fermented foods. Whether it was tangy kimchi, crisp sauerkraut, or creamy yogurt, these probiotic-rich staples were her secret weapon for a healthy gut and a glowing complexion. Fermentation is the art of controlled spoilage, where natural bacteria break down sugars and starches, creating lactic acid. This process not only preserves the food, but also boosts its nutritional value. For example, kimchi, a spicy Korean cabbage dish, is loaded with vitamins A, B, and C, while sauerkraut is a gut-friendly powerhouse packed with fiber and antioxidants. Yogurt, made by fermenting milk with live cultures, provides calcium, protein, and billions of probiotics to support digestion. But the benefits go beyond the gut. A healthy microbiome reduces inflammation throughout the body, including your skin. By balancing bacteria, fermented foods can calm acne, redness, and even eczema. Interestingly, fermented foods date back thousands of years. Ancient Romans had their own version of sauerkraut, while Indian households perfected curd yogurt. Cleopatra supposedly credited her radiant skin to bathing in sour milk, which is rich in lactic acid. So most oatmeal meatloaf recipes use the oats as a side piece to, like, 2 pounds of lean ground beef, but that was obviously not what people were working with back then. Instead, the loaf was made entirely of layers of oatmeal, with sausages and bacon stuffed into it to give that meaty profile. Some dried onions and garlic meant that there was good enough reason to get the fine plates out, and there was always enough to go around too. Plus, Grandma's really ran with the recipe right after the Depression ended and things started going back to normal. They would add things like tomato sauces and never spare the eggs or the flour. Probably why kids would love it so much since they went all out with it. But after going through a patch where this was a luxury, you cannot blame them for wanting to go the extra mile either. Beef stew is a nostalgic childhood dish nobody can go without. Fresh pearl onions and a broth made out of the beef stock were the tricks to an unbeatable stew that is sorely missed every time you eat one that is not your grandma's. The modern-day beef stew involves an entire list of 10 ingredients for better readability that feels more like an overdone broth mixed with a lot of toppings. But that is because beef stews have gone a bit out of fashion unless you are in the South. This is also because beef stews today are usually made with red wine as a base. But the hearty and vigor-filled ones of your childhood were all about keeping it simple with vegetables and a solid cut of beef. This recipe really made a name for itself during the mid-1930s to 40s when people were facing a dire shortage of eggs. Still, if you did not have even some potatoes on hand but still wanted a pancake to cheer your kids up, you would go for eggless pancakes. Some shortening, sugar, milk, and salt were all you needed to make this version of the beloved American dish, plus just some water to bind if you could not find any milk to spare. Lucky were the homes that had lard, as that really made for some fluffy and thick cakes, but complaining was not really something people did during those times. A simple recipe like this let them revisit the taste of pancakes from back when they had fully stocked fridges, after all. Every morning, Grandma had her trusty honey and lemon water. It was her daily ritual for hydration, detoxification, and a bright, healthy glow. This simple concoction is made by mixing the juice of half a lemon and a teaspoon of raw honey into a warm glass of water. The warmth enhances the release of lemon's vitamin C, while the honey's natural enzymes and antioxidants remain intact. Together, they create a harmonious blend that's as healing as it is hydrating. Honey and lemon water works wonders for your skin. Lemon's vitamin C is a key player in collagen production, reducing wrinkles and improving skin elasticity. Meanwhile, honey's antimicrobial properties help combat acne and soothe irritation. This duo has been cherished for centuries. Ancient Egyptians used honey as a natural healer, While lemons have been prized in Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine for their cleansing properties, during the 18th century, sailors carried lemons to prevent scurvy. Not for skincare, but it probably didn't hurt their complexions either. Grandma swore by it, calling it her liquid sunshine. And honestly, who wouldn't want a glow as bright as hers, without the expensive skincare aisle drama? There are some baking challenges that only your grandmother is equipped for, and making the pinnacle of brown butter sweet potato pies was one of them. Seriously, even bakeries and fancy eateries have struggled to nail every aspect of a pie, but for most home chefs in the United States, it seems to be just another Tuesday with the oven. You take a flaky pie crust with a velvety potato filling that is usually topped off with whipped cream, but most older cooks preferred maple syrup as that was what they grew up with. Just a bit of dark brown sugar would elevate this dish into the perfect dessert, though it would often steal the show entirely on its own. The thing is built to make your mouth water, and we mean looks-wise too, since the brown and caramel hues of the pie just make it all the more enticing. Have you ever heard of this one before, and would you try it? Potatoes had more use than just what was under all the layers. Once peeled, people would often fry the potato skins as a midday snack. Nothing would ever go to waste in homes back then, as you must have gathered by now. If they can make stuff out of sausage drippings and drain the fat from bacon to reuse, frying up some potato skins does not seem that out of the box at all. These fried skins were the perfect sidekick to potato pancakes, and the fact that the skins had a lot of health benefits made it all the more appealing. Things like this really helped to keep appetites in check, and that meant that the financial situation of the home would be calmer too. First up, we have a classic, the bone broth elixir. This humble liquid gold has been a staple in kitchens worldwide for centuries. It's made by simmering animal bones, chicken, beef, or even fish, with water, vegetables, and a splash of vinegar. The magic happens during those long hours of slow cooking. The heat breaks down the collagen in the bones, releasing amino acids like glycine and proline, along with essential minerals like calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus. Collagen helps maintain skin elasticity, giving your face that firm, youthful look. And for your joints, the gelatin from the broth acts as a lubricant, because who wants creaky knees when dancing to their favorite oldies? Historically, bone broth was a survival tool. From medieval peasants to 19th century pioneers, it nourished people during tough times. In ancient China, bone broth was prized as a beauty tonic, reserved for royalty. Making it is simple but rewarding. Think of it as slow cooking your way to the fountain of youth. Just don't let anyone catch you licking the pot clean, unless it's grandma. Shepherd's pie is an American classic for many reasons besides just being the expected main course whenever you were heading on over to your grandparents'. It has the gravy, the meat, and mashed potatoes, which all combine together to make for a pretty comforting meal. The kind of dish that really takes the edge off, you know? Plus, grandmas would usually stick to the traditional recipe of using ground lamb. Differences between various kinds of lamb can make or break a good shepherd's pie, but our elders seem to have it nailed down to instinct. Combine an extremely solid taste with the fact that it was pretty cheap to make, with the most expensive part just being your protein, and you have a dish that can easily stand the test of time. Cornmeal mush is usually made with water or milk, and is a type of pudding or porridge depending on the needs of the meal. This became incredibly widespread in the southeastern and eastern bits of America, and it makes sense given how much wartime rations were consumed there. When the government would hand those out, they would often make a point to lower sugar usage and use molasses to conserve other ingredients, so people would pair cornmeal mush along with them. Mush is a more accurate term since it does kind of land somewhere in the middle ground between a pudding and a porridge. It has the consistency of the latter, but it gels and sets like the former, which gives it a slightly airy texture too. Did you know it would not be cooked in milk though? That was set after the mush was prepared to cool it down. Another staple in Grandma's wellness routine was her love for herbal teas. She swore by brews like chamomile, dandelion root, and nettle, claiming these natural infusions were her secret to detoxifying, nourishing, and keeping her skin clear. To make these teas, all you need are dried herbs. For chamomile, steep a teaspoon of flowers in hot water for 5 minutes. For dandelion root, simmer it in water for about 10 minutes to draw out its earthy, slightly bitter flavor. And for nettle, use a teaspoon of dried leaves in hot water for 5 to 7 minutes. Chamomile is best known for its calming properties, but it also contains antioxidants that help fight skin inflammation. Dandelion root acts as a natural detoxifier, flushing out toxins and improving liver function, which can help keep your skin clear. Nettle, rich in vitamins A, C, and K, supports blood circulation and reduces puffiness. These herbs have been used for centuries in various cultures. Chamomile was revered by the ancient Egyptians, while dandelion root has roots in traditional Chinese medicine. Nettle has been called a beauty herb for centuries, not just for its medicinal qualities, but because it's believed to give skin a healthy glow. If one of these forgotten recipes brought back a memory you had not tasted in years, tell us your favorite in the comments, give this video a like, and subscribe so you never miss the flavors time tried to erase.